What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Right Now Powder Coating channel. In today's video, we're going to walk through the costs to start your own powder coating business. And we're going to run from the very beginning all the way up to where I'm at now and beyond. So if you're thinking about getting into the powder coating industry, we're going to go over exactly how much it's going to cost you from starting at the very beginning level up through the professional level. We're going to break down the pros and cons of all of the equipment. We're going to break down the costs and exactly what you're going to need up front to get started. And I've got a spoiler alert for you guys. It may be less than you think it is. We're going to start small. So this is your entry level equipment. And you'd be surprised, you could probably get started between $1,500 and $5,000 depending upon what you go with. And if you're curious about what that money will get you, let's dive into it and see. Obviously, the first thing you're gonna need is a powder coating gun. Your entry level systems are gonna range anywhere from $100 to $500. And we're gonna put up a couple examples of exactly what you can get for that money right now. Obviously, the more you can spend on these guns, the better. Every $100 increment is gonna get you something a little bit more sophisticated, a little more technology, a little better capability. So my favorite gun in this lower end is the Eastwood dual coat gun. You're gonna be able to pick it up on Eastwood site or down in my links off Amazon for about $125 to $150. Of course, you're gonna need some cups and some powder and all that kind of stuff, but this is my favorite gun. I actually prefer it over the Harbor Freight gun, which is actually a little less money, around $80. I just think the Eastwood gun does a little bit better job. Another option that's a little bit more expensive is the Red Line gun. I've never personally used the gun, but I've heard decent things about it for an entry-level gun. So go into a Facebook group, hit a search for that, and you'll see some feedback on those guns. But those are basically your top three that are gonna be under $500. The next thing you're gonna need is a powder coating oven. Now, this can actually be about anything. It could be a little like small toaster oven all the way up to a professional oven. Now, we're starting small, so think toaster oven if you're doing small parts. My first oven was a household oven that I picked up from my mother-in-law. So obviously I didn't pay anything for that. That's a super cheap way to get into it, and I was lucky enough to have 220 out in my garage. If you don't, you can find plenty of small toaster ovens and start practicing with those. Now, Eastwood does offer a pretty small oven. I think it's around $100 to $150, maybe $200. That gets you going pretty quickly. It is super small, so we're gonna limit what we can cure out in that oven, but it's a good start. Now, on Columbia Coating site, they have a little bit of a larger entry level oven. It's gonna push you around $600, but you will be able to coat bigger parts such as pieces of suspension and that sort of thing. Now, obviously, when you're powder coating, you're gonna need an air compressor. If you're using a small gun, you're not gonna need a lot of CFM or anything like that. So a lot of your entry level air compressors, the pancake ones, you can use those. You can pick these up really cheap actually on Facebook Marketplace, or if you want something new, there's plenty of options on Amazon and stuff like that. Typically, you're gonna be between $150 and $500 for your air compressor. Now, with that being said, you need to make sure that your air is completely dry. Any air that goes to the gun needs to be perfectly dry, so you're gonna wanna pick up some filters for the liquid and moisture and oil that's in those air compressors to drain that out before it gets to your gun. Now, you're not producing a lot of air, so you're not gonna have a lot of moisture, but still, even those cheap Harbor Freight filters, they're gonna help you out quite a bit because you don't want that moisture getting into the powder. Now, as a beginner, you don't really need a paint booth because you're probably not gonna be painting a ton of parts, but if you are, there are a few cost-effective options. Columbia Coatings has a small benchtop unit for about $600, which is actually pretty affordable. It's a single filter setup. Also, Eastwood has a benchtop setup, pretty mobile. It's got like a furnace filter, which is under $200, I believe. So pretty affordable options if you want to contain that powder and keep it enclosed. I know when I started powder coating in my garage, I was just spraying it out in the open. Powder went everywhere. It is a headache, so if you can afford one of these booths, go ahead and grab one. It's gonna save you a bunch of time. I know there's a lot of people out there that are using household fans with a filter in front of it. It's a little bit dangerous, which is actually what the Eastwood one kind of looks like, but just make sure you're filtering it really well and you have a really high density filter because you don't want that powder going into that fan motor and boom. So just depends on how much powder is in the air, but it is combustible when it's in suspense in the air, so be careful with that. Now, your parts are probably not brand new, so you're gonna have to prep them somehow. So think paint stripper. If you need like a way to get the paint off, you're probably not gonna have access to the chemicals I do, but an aircraft stripper from the store, something like that might work. Obviously sanding the part will work, wire brush will work, so you may need a grinder or a drill. You could also buy smaller sandblasters. Eastwood provides a couple options that are around the $200 mark up to the $300 mark. As long as you have enough air with your air compressor, so check the CFM requirements, because if you don't have enough air, it's not going to be very efficient. I also know there's some handheld sandblasting units which might work for you too. But most of you guys are going to be getting in there with your hands, unfortunately. So it's just part of the process of saving up your money and being able to buy that bigger, better equipment that makes life a lot easier. You got to pay your dues and get in there with a wire wheel or a piece of sandpaper and just do what you got to do to get it clean. Obviously, if you can get some aircraft stripper and that works to remove the paint, that is the quickest way. Rinse it off, scuff it up a little bit, and you should be good to go. With that being said, your tools are probably going to run you between $150 to $2,000 for prep tools. It just depends how crazy you get here. You can go on that low end and do everything by hand, or go to the higher end and have a little more ease in getting the paint off. The last thing you're obviously going to need is powder. Like I've said in previous videos, my favorite place to go for small batches is Prismatic Powders. They have over 7,000 colors, and no, this is not a paid advertisement, but they're just a really good, easy site to work with. You can get very small quantities, fairly reasonable shipping, and there's hardly any delays in getting the powder. You're usually going to be looking around $10 all the way up to, they have some powders that are $50 a pound, but if you're doing small things, you're probably not going to be buying a lot, mostly a pound here, a pound there. So that's where I would recommend you go. So you've got all your tools, you've got all your equipment, now it's time to get to work. So the more you sacrifice with tools and the more effort you put into it, the cheaper you can be. The more ease you want your coating operation, the higher you're going to be. So do what's best for you. All right, if you're already powder coating or you have a little bit more money and you can go up to that mid-range, you're going to have to expect to pay between $5,000 and $15,000 to get your whole setup going. And obviously we're going to start with the guns. So the best guns to use here, you can start on the low side with like an RC1 gun. It's going to be around $500. Or you can go up to a little bit higher gun and get into a pool coat gun, which is going to be in the $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 range. There are a ton of people using that gun currently. Everyone says that they're a pretty good gun, they just have their limits. Or you can go up to the Gema clone gun that you see all over the place. It's about $500 to $1,200, $1,500. It depends how you get it. But these are all pretty mid-level guns that are gonna get you a little bit step ahead of those Eastwood Harbor Freight guns. Now for your mid-range ovens, you can expect to spend between $2,000 and $7,000, and that includes if you build it yourself. So there's plenty of forums out there that talk about building your own oven. Just make sure that everything is wired up safely. Have an electrician check it out, because the worst thing you can do is burn down your place. If you don't want to build it yourself, Columbia Coatings offers a very entry-level, affordable oven. Typically in the $6,000 range for smaller ones. At the time of this recording, I don't really know what they're at right now, but they're in that middle range. Hot Coat Eastwood does have an oven. It's a 4x4x6 that's on sale right now on Amazon. We found it for $5,500. That's actually a pretty affordable startup oven and a decent size. You're gonna be able to do a lot more parts in there, including wheels, so that's pretty exciting. A lot of the booths from Columbia, you're gonna have to reach out to them and get pricing, but if you get the benchtop or smaller booths, they should be affordable and fall into this $5,000 to $15,000 range for your equipment package. The Eastwood booth, you can get a 4x4x6 from their website for right around $5,300. That's a pretty affordable booth. It's a great way to keep your shop clean and keep all that powder from getting everywhere. Now with your air compressor, you're going to want to step it up a little bit to get a little bit more CFM, and actually these are probably the largest you're going to need unless you really get into sandblasting. A typical 60-gallon air compressor is going to probably be enough. Around that 5 horsepower to 10 horsepower range is going to give you plenty of air. Expect to pay around $1,100 all the way up to about $1,500 for one of these units. But they're super reliable. They have a lot of tank storage, 60 gallons, and they're going to last you a long time. Now for sandblasting, you can probably upgrade to a cabinet type system at this point. Eastwood has a really nice system. Redline Engineering Products has a really nice system, very similar to what I used to use. You're going to be in the ballpark of $1,500 to about $2,400 depending upon which system you use. You can also check out a place called grizzly.com. They have a really nice siphon feed blast setup. All of those setups are going to help you a lot when it comes to stripping parts, and obviously you're going to be able to go back and use some of those tools from the beginner steps too, and maybe you don't have to upgrade everything at once. So take it as you can and as you can afford. Now, if you're wanting to just blow it out of the water and go big, but you're not ready to break the bank, you could probably piece a system together for about $15,000 to $50,000. Here's how you're gonna spend that money. Now, a top tier gun, you're gonna be able to find anywhere from $2,500 all the way up to $8,000. So for example, our Electron Bear system, which is a professional level gun, we have a kit starting at $2,500 on our website. And I know the last time I checked, the GEMA guns are pushing about $8,000. Now I would put these guns head to head and my Electron's gonna win every single time, especially for that price point. But it's up to you. Nordson has a good gun. Wagner has a good gun. The Kremlin gun, I don't know. I've never used it, but I hear some people like it. So expect to pay in that price range, $2,500 all the way up to $8,000 for a good quality powder coating gun. Now your larger ovens on the low end, if you're going with like a Columbia coating oven, they're gonna be down anywhere from that $10,000 to $20,000 range. It depends on how big you go, so you have to spend your budget wisely. Those are the most economical entry-level ovens that I think have the safest setups on them. There are other oven manufacturers out there, but these are probably the safest, and they have really good community support. They have chat groups on Facebook. They answer their phones nights and weekends, so they're a pretty good group to work with. The Reliant oven is also a very good entry-level oven out there. A 6x6x12 is probably gonna run you somewhere in the $7,000 to $9,000 ballpark. Don't hold me to that. I didn't get a quote, I'm just going off previous knowledge. If you want a more expensive oven, places like GAT, RTT, Electron, we offer those. You're probably going to break your budget. So if you have more than $50,000 that you can spend, maybe look at one of these more professional grade ovens, just because they're gonna last longer, you're gonna have less issues, and they're gonna heat quicker, they're gonna be more reliable, all that sort of thing. Now your booths are gonna get a little bit more expensive, obviously, as you get bigger. Columbia Coatings has booths that are 8 foot wide, 10 foot wide, 12 foot wide. They're all gonna go up, and again, you're gonna have to go on their website to get quotes. They don't always share their pricing information with us. We did find a booth from Eastwood that is a 10 foot by 6 foot by 7 foot, and it was on sale for $5,250. Now with your air compressors, you're probably gonna be able to go back and rely on that same air compressor I talked about in the mid-range, but if you're going to be sandblasting and you wanna use like a pot style sandblaster, you're probably going to need a larger system. My air compressor is a 25 horsepower screw drive compressor from Eaton, and I love it to death. It puts out about 85 CFM, so it's not as much as I need to run the bigger pots, but it does amazing with our little small pots. So if you want to go to the really big sandblasting setups, you're probably going to need a system that's pushing over 150 CFM, all the way up to 300, 350 CFM, and you're going to be talking probably closer to that $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 mark. So to stay down under the $50,000 but still provide professional powder coating services, let's rely on those 60-gallon air compressors that we talked about before. Same with sandblasting. If you have a way, so my sandblast room, we built it ourselves. It's just a metal tube frame with sheets welded to it, and then we cut out a hole and we just use a dust extractor for our dust collection, and we have a big open area to sandblast in. It was super economical. I made it myself. If you don't have that ability, there are plenty of companies that sell them. Again, you're gonna break the bank with these things. They're $30,000, $40,000. If you have a small cabinet style one, I do recommend upgrading to a pressure pot on that. And you can usually do that for a few $1,000s. And that's gonna give you more force when you're sandblasting those parts versus siphon pickup alone. Now, if you're getting into treating products with zinc phosphate or iron phosphate, there's a couple companies that offer different options. I know Eastwood has some, Columbia Coatings has some. I never had luck with Columbia Coatings phosphate. It always seemed to rust apart. So what I recommend you do is call up Lincoln Chemical. That's who I work with. They'll actually come out and do demos with you. They have small quantity chemicals all the way down to 5-gallon pails and then up to 55-gallon barrels, and they're gonna work with you. So you might need a pressure washer, which will set you back a couple $1,000. We like the Hotsy type brands or the North Star brands. You could even use a pressure washer that's hooked up to a heated water tank or something like that, just to get that warm water so you have that heat to remove the oils, and the pressure of the pressure washer to remove the dirt and soil and all that sort of thing. So that's what we recommend, is use a professional company. They're going to give you professional results, and they're going to work with you to make sure that your pH level and all of that is exactly where it needs to be to treat that part. And they're going to tell you which chemicals you should be using, whether you're doing a lot of aluminum, steel, or whatever it may be. So if you price it all together, hopefully you're gonna land under that $50,000 mark. Now, obviously you can get way better equipment. It just depends how much money you have. I know when I moved into this building, I dropped almost $40,000 on my equipment, and that was an oven, a booth, a pressure washer, and an air compressor, and that got me going. I already had a powder coating gun that I just kind of kept using from that mid-range, and then when we were able to save up some money, we were able to upgrade our guns. So hopefully you guys get something out of this video. Hopefully it helped give you some options, and you can kind of see the path where you can grow to. I started, like I said, in my garage with an Eastwood gun doing hobby stuff, but then when I started powder coating wheels for dealerships, we stepped up to a KCI Korean gun. They don't have the best support, that's why I didn't mention them earlier. And then once we got enough work, we saved up and we went to the Gima guns, and now obviously you guys know I'm with the Electron brand, so we've switched all over to Electron. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight. You're gonna have to be patient. There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of late nights. I can't tell you how many 12 to 15, 16-hour days I've worked to get where I'm at now. So it's easy to look back and be like, oh, look at all this, but it takes a lot of hard work, and you guys can do it. You can get through it, I promise you. And if you wanna learn more and get more in-depth videos, how-tos and all that stuff, check out the links below. I've started a school community where all of our powder coating friends are gonna be. We're all gonna share information. We're gonna do training. We're gonna have a bunch of stuff on there. Join as soon as you can, because the price is continuously rising as we get more members. We are trying to make sure that everyone in this group supports the group, they share with the group, and they bring their problems to the group so that we can help you. Until next time, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and go out and coat something.